a case where if they can do this to me, they can do this to anyone. And these are bad people. These are, in many cases, I believe, sick people. As far as the trial itself, it was very unfair. We weren't allowed to use our election expert under any circumstances. You saw what happened to some of the witnesses that were on our side. They were literally crucified by this man who looks like an angel, but he's really a devil. He looks so nice and soft. People say, oh, he seems like such a nice man. No, unless you saw him in action. Crimes. They're falsifying business records. That sounds so bad. To me, it sounds very bad. You know, it's only a misdemeanor, but to me, it sounds so bad. When they say falsifying business, that's a bad thing for me. I've never had that before. I'm falsifying. You know what falsifying business records is? In the first degree. They say falsifying business records. Sounds so good, right?
That was Donald Trump continuing his perpetual meltdown in the aftermath of his conviction on all 34 criminal counts. Here, Trump says that the witnesses were, quote, literally crucified by who I presume is the judge in this case. This, probably goes without saying, but none of Donald Trump's witnesses were literally crucified. Granted, I didn't watch every second of the coverage, but I'm pretty sure that if a Trump witness was nailed to a cross at any point during the trial, I probably would have heard about it. Although I will say one thing, it is nice for Trump to bestow the Jesus imagery onto someone else for a change amid his constant references to himself being the new messiah for conservatives in this country. Trump then went on to wallow in the usual victimhood, claiming we weren't allowed to use our election expert under any circumstances. Now, you'll be shocked to hear this, but that is an outright lie. In reality, Judge Merchan said that former Federal Election Commission Chair Bradley Smith could testify by providing background information about the FEC, but that he wasn't allowed to opine on whether Trump broke federal election laws. And what Trump took out of that is that his prize witness was muzzled and prohibited from taking the stand. To claim that Donald Trump lies every time he opens his mouth would be the understatement of the century. Trump then tries his hand at another tactic by trying to downplay the severity of his crime. After all, he just falsified business records. See, if you simply say things like they're no problem, they magically become no problem. Arson? Who cares? Murder? No sweat. Terrorism? No problem. See how easy that is? All part of Trump's magical plan to downplay the severity of his own criminal behavior. If you just say it like it's no biggie, then it becomes no biggie. And then, well, things got kind of weird.
So you're going to call it. Now, I would have testified. I wanted to testify. The theory is you never testify, because as soon as you testify, anybody, if it were George Washington, don't testify, because they'll get you on something that you said slightly wrong, and then they sue you for perjury. But I didn't care about that. I wanted to. But the judge allowed them to go into everything that I was ever involved in, not this case, everything that I was ever involved in, which is a first. In other words, you could go into every single thing that I ever did. Was he a bad boy here? Was he a bad boy there? And my lawyer said, what do you need to go through? And all you wanted to do is testify simply on this case. Because I would have loved to have testified. To this day, I would have liked to have testified. But you would have said something out of whack, like it was a beautiful sunny day and it was actually raining out.
That's right. The issue is that too many people were trying to figure out if Trump was, and I quote, a bad boy here and a bad boy there. I don't really have anything to say about that, other than that it's just a little bit uncomfortable to hear a 77-year-old man call himself a, bad boy. And then, of course, he claims that, of course, he wanted to testify and that he totally, definitely would have testified, but that he was afraid that he'd have gotten taken down by a teensy-weensy mistake, like saying the weather was wrong. Of course, in reality, his attorneys were less concerned about him misrepresenting the weather than they were about their client perjuring himself over and over and over. And I don't like to speak in absolutes here, but I can 1,000% guarantee you that if Trump would have taken the stand to testify in his own defense, he would have lied and perjured himself so quickly that he'd have managed to get himself charged with yet another felony charge faster than he can say rigged trial. This dude is physically incapable of not lying, which is legally fine in the court of public opinion, but a court of law is an entirely different story. In fact, I spoke with my Legal Breakdown co-host Glenn Kirshner about the likelihood of Trump taking the stand back when the trial was still ongoing, and here's what he had to say. And do you believe that this will have any impact on Trump's willingness to actually take the stand, or do you think he's already made that decision up anyway?
I don't think Donald Trump can take the stand for a New York minute without lying, committing perjury, and, you know, his lies are so transparent when he tells them. I don't think there's any chance he was going to take the stand even before getting this Sandoval notice, which is devastating. If the jurors are presented with 13 instances of serious misconduct by Donald Trump, do you really think they're going to give him the benefit of the doubt when it comes time to judge his guilt of the 34 falsifying business records crimes for which he's been indicted in this case?
Glenn, is there any reason that Donald Trump might opt to actually take the stand and testify here, or does he actually stand to benefit more from just sitting down and shutting up the entire time?
Yeah, Brian, he has the right to remain silent. I don't think Donald Trump has the ability to remain silent, but I think his attorneys will recommend to him in the strongest possible terms that it's not going to inure to your advantage if you take the stand in this case. Now, listen, Donald Trump may be so full of himself that he thinks he can win over the jurors. And remember, he only has to win over one juror. If he wins over one juror with his bluff and his bluster and his bull on the stand, well, then that could result in a hung jury and a mistrial. The good news is if the jury hangs, in other words, if they can't decide the case unanimously, either for guilt or not guilty, acquittal, then the prosecutors can retry it. And let me tell you, I did a lot of retrials in my years. Ordinarily, prosecutors fine-tune their presentation of the evidence, and the retrial goes a little bit better and often will result in a conviction even after the first case hung.
So I get that now that he's lost, Trump wants to play Monday morning quarterback and pretend like he was silenced and that his witnesses were censored and that this whole thing was one big travesty of justice. But we all have eyes, we all have ears, we weren't born yesterday, we know the tricks that Donald Trump's attorneys tried to pull during this case, we know why Trump himself couldn't testify on his own behalf, and that's because none of the facts were on his side. Notice how he's so quick to run to the cameras and weigh in on quite literally anything and everything when he has no legal exposure for doing so, but the moment he's in the courtroom and has an obligation, a legal obligation, to tell the truth, suddenly it's crickets from someone who otherwise does not know how to shut the fuck up. So Trump will continue to have his little temper tantrums, but remember, and I've said this before and I'll say it every day if I have to, Donald Trump was convicted because he, Donald Trump, a grown-ass man, made the conscious decision to falsify business records, which he knew was a crime, by the way, and therefore why he made Michael Cohen do his dirty work for him, because he wanted to hide an affair he had from the American people before the election. Which part of that was Joe Biden or the Democrats' fault? Was it Biden's fault that Trump cheated on his wife? Was it Biden's fault that Trump paid her off? Was it Biden's fault that he cooked his books? Was it Biden's fault that he then repaid Michael Cohen enough to compensate even for the taxes of that payment to make him whole through a scheme that was literally recorded on stationery? Of course not. The fact is that a jury of 12 New Yorkers who didn't ask to be there looked at the evidence and convicted him because of actions that he himself took. Donald Trump, again, is a grown man. He's running to lead the party of personal responsibility. It is about time he learned how to actually take some. I've got a really exciting announcement. I've written a book. It's called Shameless. This book explores how Republicans have exploited their historical branding while attacking our democracy, how the media has proven itself a willful participant, and how Democrats can learn from this to rebalance the political scales and save our democracy. It has been a lifelong dream of mine to write my own book, and so I'd like to ask you to pre-order it by clicking the link right here on the screen. And if you buy within this pre-order period, your book is going to come with a signed nameplate. As you know, I've never had a single sponsor on my channel. I don't ask for money or anything like that, but if you're looking for a way to support me, this is hands down the best way to do it. So again, follow the link right here on the screen, and thank you from the bottom of my heart for pre-ordering Shameless. And as always, make sure to subscribe to see more of my content.